Now, did you know that in the past decade, about 800 libraries have closed across the country? Now, that's about a fifth. And the latest to be under threat are in Nottingham, where the council's launched a consultation on the future of 3 libraries. The city says it needs to save money, and though no decision has yet been made, the closures in Basford, Aspley and Lenton will be part of a modernisation process. Well, locals in those communities say the closures would be devastating. And we went along to Basford Library to see people gather and read together in the most peaceful form of protest. In a moment, we'll hear from the leader of Nottingham City Council, but here's what people at Basford had to say.
I am here because this is my library that I've been coming to for 42 years, and I cannot stand the thought of it closing. I'm actually really upset about it.
It's an immediate place we can come for information, for entertainment, and for developing enthusiasm about learning in our children.
Well, it's the only community place around this area, and it's a really deprived area, so they need it. And a lot of elderly people come to the Natter group.
For me, it's a little bit like a crime against the disability people, because there's a lot of children who are not able to go to the huge places. They are not able to go to the huge libraries with a lot of lights, with a lot of people.
If this library goes, it's going to make an impact on their lives in the future, especially the young people, and that's going to cost money.
Well, I also talked to the leader of the City Council, Labour's David Mellon, and he told me that no decision has been made, but they feel that they have no choice but to consider some very unpopular cuts.
We'd love to protect libraries like we'd like to protect children's centres and leisure centres, but sadly we've had to make those decisions in order to reduce our outgoings. Basford Library has been chosen as one of the ones that we are consulting on, and no decisions have been made yet, because actually the public usage of that library is less than most other libraries in the city. The message to government would be fund cities like Nottingham fairly. We have this last year seen a slight increase in the money that we've had, but actually it doesn't make up for 11 years of underfunding, where our responsibilities have grown and our resources have decreased.
Well, joining us now to discuss this is one of Nottingham's favourite literary sons. Henry Normal is the poet and writer behind TV shows including Gavin and Stacey and Alan Partridge. Henry, welcome. It's a real pleasure to have you on the show, and I wish it was about something that you were a bit happier about, but what is your reaction to this idea?
Well, I don't think they should close any libraries. I don't think it's the way forward. I think they should be spending more on libraries. If it wasn't for libraries, I wouldn't have made any television programmes, and will certainly wouldn't have had a career in writing. And I'm from a council estate, Bilborough. We're hearing today about food banks. We're hearing about increased energy costs, and then we're going to take away books from people on council estates. I think it's despicable, really. What I'd like to see is people invest in it, because they're investing in the future of literacy. They're investing in giving youngsters and older people a chance to explore. We're bombarded with negative images. The great thing about books, and you get a lot more in libraries, is that you explore new worlds and you find something more in life. Otherwise, it's not worth living if we don't, have some positivity. I know we've got the internet now, but nobody reads War and Peace on a mobile phone. Libraries are a safe place. They're a safe place for kids. They're a safe place to go. They host events, and some of those events can be very important for the community. We've had people talking about community today. There are very few places now where you can get together and be part of a local community.
And I know that community aspect is really important for you. Let me just bring in our politicians. Toby, we heard that Henry saying how important the library has been for him, and of course those users at Basford Library who were very unhappy. But the council do say that their hands are tied financially and they have to make tough decisions.
Yeah, I mean, well, firstly, on behalf of those people that are there protesting, I think my heart goes out to them. But it's important that protest is listened to and that every possible alternative is considered. I don't know about the specific libraries that are being earmarked for closure, but what I would say is this, is Nottingham City Council has had £100 million of cuts in the last 11 years, and 2/3 of the money that the council spent is already earmarked before they start, because it's statutory services, it's schools, it's care services and home care, things that they have to do by law. So that then comes, where does that £100 million come from? Well, it ends up having to come from swimming pools, from sports centres, from libraries, from the fun things that Henry says we all enjoy. And I think it's absolutely cowardly of government to constantly cut local government by more than what they will cut any other department, because what they're doing is devolving the tough decisions, letting the leaders of the councils, wherever they be in Derbyshire, in Nottingham or whatever, have to make those decisions.
Let me bring Pauline, because, you know, we did hear from David Mellon basically saying to central government that they're not being treated fairly. Are you being fair?
Well, it is down to local politicians, and actually, I have to say, as a little girl, I used to go to Lenton Library, so I know it. But Nottingham City is cutting, or thinking they're going to cut these libraries. Nottinghamshire County Council isn't. Derby City isn't. Derbyshire County Council aren't closing libraries. So why is it the one Labour authority, they haven't closed them?
They have in the past.
They have,
so you're giving examples of all Conservative run
I think
local councils?
They give better value for money and they're less likely to cut libraries. And I think that maybe the leader of the council here needs to look very carefully at his budget and what he is spending his money on, because 3 libraries will not save a huge amount of money in this situation.
What would you say then? Is that a case of a council not running their books properly?
No, I don't think that's the case at all. We just saw on your clip at the start there, 800 libraries across the country have closed, a fifth of all the libraries. You look at Shore Start centres all across the country. Councils are constantly being put in this position of what they have to cut. Nottingham City Council have been re-elected several times and are viewed as a very good local authority.
Okay,
but they are faced with this situation. I don't know about that particular choice, and like Henry, I don't want to see libraries closed.
Okay, well, let me bring Henry back,
Sure.
because Henry, obviously you've heard what we're saying here, and, you know, there is this big question mark about finances, really, and Nottingham City Council say they're in a difficult financial situation.
Well, they're always in a difficult financial situation. I don't know when any council hasn't been, but the cuts keep coming and coming, and the problem is, once they've gone, they're never going to come back. So it's really the future generations that we're talking about as well. And I remember going back how many pubs were, how many churches there were in Nottingham, and everything's been cut back. So if you want to meet people, if you want to socialise in any way, there's very few spaces, and the activities that the libraries get involved in, it may not mean much to a councillor, but to the people involved, it can mean everything.
Okay, thank you, Henry. You know, for both of you, really, and Pauline, you said that you used to visit Lenton Library as a young girl. You know, what is the legacy that we're leaving if these libraries close?
Well, life does change. People are using the internet more. They are using libraries a lot less than they did when I was a girl, because they've got alternatives. And I think that's the problem, and that's where councils have to juggle. Again, it's choices that they have to make. And although I don't like to see libraries closed at all, because I do think that they're a useful thing for the community to use, but people have to make the choices, and they make those decisions. They are democratically elected to do that, and that's why it is devolved to councils who are close to the people to make those decisions.
You know, is it a sign of changing times? Because, you know, the Nottingham City Council do say that, and this is partly because of the pandemic, they had a 330% increase in online activity during the pandemic. So should we be focusing a bit more on the digital then, rather than saving buildings?
Well, I think that many libraries have focused on the digital, and there's a huge amount of access to the internet and other things that we see within libraries. As I say, in terms of these particular libraries, I don't know the city well enough, but I think they are worth fighting for. But local services are, and we're seeing, you know, in Derbyshire, they're on about closing 7 care homes. We've seen Sure Start centres right across the country close. We've seen local authorities just stretched to the extent that all they're able to do is turn up to work on a Monday and decide what they're going to close today. And I just think that whole austerity programme is failed, and we need a change of approach.
OK, well, we've run out of time here, but really, it's a subject that I know people feel so passionate about. Now, Henry, thank you so much for joining us here on Politics East Midlands.